Okay, hello, it's Paul Green again with another one of our regular Focus On panel where we bring together three experts and just talk about a topic that hopefully is of interest to the average small business owner. And today, as you can see from the title below, we're looking at tone of voice and authenticity in a marketing context. So I'm just going to let my panel guests introduce themselves before we crack on. So Kevin, do you want to let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Kevin Robinson from 13 Media Group, your copywriter in this particular instance. And we basically do what it says on the tin. We create copy, blog copy, website copy, print copy, anything with words for just about everybody, with some exceptions where we don't do that particular industry. But overall, yeah, we create words for people.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Eleanor.
Good morning. I'm Elena Lester from Shrewd Pr. I'm a PR and marketing consultant, and I help businesses to get their messages out in all forms of communication, be that social media, print, blogs, etc. And really the only market I don't particularly work with is the tech and the finance sector. But anything else, I'm able to work and cover that area off.
Okay, thank you. And our international guest, Petra, looks like she's either just cooked her breakfast or is going to cook it afterwards in the background.
It's just this restream. It takes a way wider angle of what it shows. But hey, I got no shame. Yes, I'm Petra Fisher. My main activity in life is drinking tea. And other than that, I show people how to become so visible on LinkedIn that clients actually just find them, so that you don't have to search for them, because that scares me. I'm no good at it, and I found a way around it, and that's what I teach other business owners.
Sounds perfect. Okay, well, why don't we kick off then? I'm going to come to you, Kevin, first of all, and I'm going to ask you what tone of voice is for people that might not understand what that phrase means.
Okay, well, from my point of view, I think this is tone of voice is a really interesting one, and I put something up somewhere. I do a lot of writing. I forget where I put them somewhere. I did something. I have a feeling it was actually on my own website. That'd be embarrassing if it isn't. About this idea of tone of voice, and there's kind of it's how you sound. I mean, basically, it's how your business sounds. I think for most of the people who are probably watching this, it'd be how your business presents itself to the world. How does it sound? And from my point of view, because my background is television screenwriter, television script writing and things, which is what I trained to be. When I talk about tone of voice with my clients, I have a character that they talk as, and that's probably the best way to think about it. It's your business as a person almost, and how do they speak? So yeah, and it's I'll say there'll be some point later I can rant about tone of voice. We'll rant then. I'll pass it on now.
Yeah, we'll save on the ranting. I thought we'll just start it off nice and easy. Then we'll have a little bit of a rant later on, because I know you're dying to have one.
No,
when you said you sort of adopt your client's voice, I'm just imagining you with a ventriloquist dummy in the shape of your client, and then you operating this ventriloquist dummy in the sound of your client's voice.
It is.
It's just like that, isn't it?
It's actually not that far wrong. One of the questions I ask a client before I write for him, the last questions I asked him when I do the fact find is, if your business was a character, somebody that's well known, who would it be? And if I'm within, enough that I can go, I was fairly close, then I've got the tone of voice right. So you're not far wrong there. It is.
Picture I won't get out of my head easily. So Eleanor, tone of voice presumably is important in the PR world as much as anywhere else.
Absolutely. I think also it's not only trying to think about your business, but it's also how your ideal customer will react to that. And I think often the way I've always approached it is that you have a conversation. So imagine that you're sat around the kitchen table explaining what you do or what your services are and how they can help everybody else. It's to use non-jargon terms, and just keep it simple, but get the message across effectively and demonstratively, really, I think. And it's also making sure that it's clear. So simple terms, simple examples to help you move forward, and very much remembering who you're trying to talk to, and depending on their life stage, their age, you will have a slightly different approach, and also making sure that you don't use acronyms and jargon that you within the industry will be aware of, but those outside may not be so familiar with.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And Petra, what's it like in the social media world then? Is it still important to help distinguish yourself by having your own sort of tone of voice?
Yeah, definitely. Because especially with a lot of us who are selling knowledge rather than tangible products, nobody really needs us. The knowledge is out there, and there's a million other LinkedIn trainers or copywriters. So ultimately, it's not just our knowledge, experience, and skills that people hire us for, but also, do they feel we're the right person? And that's where tone of voice comes in, and also a little bit of your personality, your values. And I think one of the things that Elena said, look, be aware of who your audience is, because sometimes on LinkedIn, what I used to talk about, it's quite okay to use a lot of jargon if it's only your peers that are your target audience. So I say to my clients, when I get them to explain things to me, I tell them it's not as if we have to present it on LinkedIn as dumbed down as you're telling it to me. I just need to understand it so I can help you. But ultimately, we need to find what your ideal client understands. And I think with tone of voice, a lot of people talk about matching the voice of your client. And when you're copywriting someone else, yeah, you definitely should. But if you're a business owner, and especially if you work one-on-one a lot with your clients, then I wouldn't match your client's voice so much. I would be as much you as possible, because then you only attract the people that that get along with you, and that make life a lot easier working together. So that's a bit how I look at tone of voice in using LinkedIn.
So
Yeah.
how do you? Sorry, Kevin, you're gonna.
No, I was just going to come in. It's quite interesting that when I was saying I brought the article on this, all three of us have actually hit. I said there's three basic tones of voice, and between us, we managed to hit all three of them individually. There's the, and I put it down to the voice. The voice is "I am you," which is people like business coaches want to speak exactly in the way that their clients speak, so that they attract them. There's the "I am me" in screw you, basically, which is, if you sell surf gear, then you need to speak to surfers, which is what Petra was saying. And then there's the, kind of I am me and you, which is this is the personality of my business, but I still talk enough like you so that you understand what my business is, which I think is kind of what all three of us are saying there, isn't it? That it's, I don't think tone of voice isn't something that is fixed. It's not pinned to a pin board of this is my tone of voice. I think you need to be aware of it so that you can use the correct tone of voice for that avatar and for that marketplace. And Petra's entirely right. Sometimes this is me. If you don't like me, that's great, because then I don't waste time on you and you don't waste time on me.
Yeah.
So I think people are scared of that sometimes.
So how do you guys go about doing it then? Because you all offer outsourced services for your clients, and I guess clients potentially are a bit nervous that you are going to represent them in the way they want to be represented. So how do you go about emulating that or understanding the tone of voice that your client wants to be? And can I come to you first on that and see what your thoughts are?
I think certainly for me, it's about looking about what they've done before. Usually when I get involved, they've got some sort of marketing material already set up, and we can look at what it is that they've currently got. And then we can take a little bit step further and sort of try and work out who their ideal customer is. And usually what they've done is that they've, say, for example, they're targeting women aged 35 to 50. Depending within that, they might have been sort of positioning themselves at the slightly older end or the slightly younger end, rather than trying to be encompassing to a more full group. And what they're probably forgetting to do is to think about the life stages that these people are at. And by imagining that they are them, they can then start to alter the language that they use, or the content that they're putting out so that it becomes more aimed at that sort of individual. So, for example, a 35-year-old with 2 kids who's just rushing backwards and forwards to the school gate is going to be slightly different from a woman in her 50s who is potentially thinking about menopause and trying to work through that and do a job and hold a house together. So you have to sort of sort your tone of voice out depending on where that is. But very definitely, I would start by looking at what they've currently got, and also then look at the media that their audience would be interacting with, because we can get cues from that can then help us to put our content together so that it's the right sort of thing, particularly from a PR perspective, if we're trying to sell in to those sorts of titles as well. That can all help so that we match.
Sorry, Anna. And from your point of view, Petra, because obviously on LinkedIn and social media in general, it's a lot about engagement, isn't it? It's a lot about commenting and engaging with your audience rather than just whacking a post out there. So how do you go about supporting your clients in that?
Because, when I work with clients, how I present myself that's one way of using tone of voice, so I attract the right people. But when I work with them, like Kevin, I have to get their tone of voice right, because even though I don't literally do copywriting, I do co-creating. So be it the profile or the post, I often write them with my clients. So there's a few things that I do. First of all, because my clients are all over the world, so they fill out a bit of a questionnaire beforehand. And there's some very practical questions like, which spelling do you want to use? UK spelling, US spelling, or Australian? Although Australian is technically UK, but, with so much slang in there. And also like the Oxford comma, yes or no. So I'll get these really, really practical thingies out of the way first. But by getting them to fill out a little questionnaire, already I get a sense of their tone of voice. Like, how do they write? Do they tell me really long stories, or do they keep it really succinct? What kind of words do they use? And then when we start working, at first I ask them a lot of questions. So even though they've already filled out that questionnaire, that was more to get their brain thinking. But by asking them questions when they're talking to me, I notice if they swear or not, and if they do, whether they're comfortable using some stronger language in their copy or not, or again, are they really sort of organized and to the point? Are they really chatty? Do they throw in humor? So I generally have a really good feel for their tone of voice. But ultimately what I ask them is, and what I ask anyone who wants to, show up on LinkedIn is, when you work with your clients or have a first meeting, how do you show up? It's like I show up in a t-shirt, so that's my profile picture on LinkedIn as well. How do you speak to them? What tone of voice? Because don't go and pretend to be something else on LinkedIn. People always say, oh yeah, but LinkedIn is so professional. It's really daunting. It's so different than all the other social media. But to me, the only way it's different is that it's got everything. You can, have an extended version of your resume there. You can have your Rolodex there, and you can have all your blog posts there. But ultimately, it is a business network. So I want to get people to think, how do you run your business? How do you show up in your business? How do you relate to your clients? And that is a tone of voice you'll need to show up in online as well.
Okay. So Kevin, you're in a given day is probably writing, many handfuls of different posts for different clients or different pieces for different clients. So how do you go through these different changes? It must be like having multiple personality disorder throughout the day, going through these different tones of voice and shifting your mindset to write words that are applicable for them. So how do you do that? How do you manage that?
It's okay. So there is how can I put this? There's a comforting process here, Paul. There's a thing I think I guess I'm sure Elena and Petra will understand is sometimes people will say to me, oh, that blog you wrote for me last week, and I go, no. I'm really sorry. I only write them. I don't read them. And I think that's part of it. And as odd as it sounds, in some ways, I think we're all very similar to actors in that, because quite often actors won't remember last week's script because the point is they're there to perform. Is that one thing? And I think there's a certain aspect of that in what we do is that when we are being somebody else, we are performing as that person, and you sort of become that person. It's not a mystical thing, it's not a magical muse making you that person. There's a comforting process. So usually if I'm writing for somebody, I start with that memory of who is this famous person speaking, is this voice, you know, who is this actor, this whatever, what are they saying, who are they talking to is then the biggest thing, I think, for me. Not to as Petra says, not to be sycophantic and be, you know, totally there for the audience, but to remember who they are, you know, who they want to be. And I think I love doing these panels because you suddenly remember all sorts of things that you do automatically that you don't really think about normally. You know, when you said about Elena, you were talking about the kind of psychographics of the person there and where they are in life and their attitudes because of that, you know. There's all sorts of weird things that I guess all three of us carry around that clients don't realize we use. That if, you know, we have a thing called niners where if somebody is 39, 49, and you know, that's a great time to talk about things that will change their life, because at some reason at 39 everybody changes their life, or at 29, you know, divorce cases go up, house sales go up for people who are 39 and 49, you know. So it's all that stuff as well, and all that process. You don't know you're doing it. You don't know it's happening. You couldn't probably struggle to write it down unless you focused on it, to, you know, specifically to do it. But that's where it comes from. For me, it doesn't come out of any wild creativity. It doesn't come out of any innate massive talent. It's practice, process, and understanding what makes that stuff work. Hopefully, makes that stuff work.
Mm-hmm. So I think this links into the other part of this session around authenticity. Because what are your views on how people represent themselves out there? Is authenticity a thing? And I'll get to you in a minute, Kevin, because I know
you're a bad man, Paul.
I know you're poised and ready to go, but I'm going to leave you just sort of in the lurch for a little bit and just go to Eleanor on that topic. Then you can have your rant afterwards.
I can see Kevin itching. I mean,
yeah, but he's got a powder for that, Eleanor. Don't worry.
I think for me, authenticity is brand values. It's does your brand and what you put out, does it match with how your audience perceives you and how you want them to perceive you? I mean, I think a brand for me that I think does brilliantly is Yorkshire Tea. If you look at, okay, you've got the Sean Bean advert, but if you also look at how they communicate on social media and particularly their Twitter feed, even when they are being slightly tongue-in-cheek, they're not that close to the mark that they're going to alienate everybody. They've got a really good understanding as to who they are, what their audience engages with, why people engage with them, and consequently they've been able to build this community that people really sort of love and enjoy. And you then have the likes of the Chancellor and like trying to jump in on that and get on that, and they even sort of repost that with sort of tongue-in-cheek quotes around it. So they are very, very comfortable in their own skin, and I think when a brand is authentic, they really are comfortable with who they are and who their followers are and really who their customer is. So I think as us as individuals and as business owners, we need to be comfortable in our own skin, be aware of what we're able to offer, and know why people buy into us, because ultimately that's why we're prepared to go forward and move on from there.
Okay, so do you think social media, I'll stick with you for now, Eleanor, do you think social media has helped people get their personality and their brand across, or hindered it?
I think it does both. I think if it's well curated and not gimmicky, then people will really buy into it. And I think the other thing is that today, what social media often does is actually provide that lens and actually enables people to see through stuff very, very much more quickly than perhaps we have in the past. So I think yes, I think on the whole, it's a very useful tool to do that. But I think there also needs to be an element of caution to make sure that you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. You're doing it because it adds value, etc.
Yeah, I'll come to you in a minute, Petra. Just a comment from Phil Coley. Thanks for tuning in, Phil. Just sort of saying, very interesting to listen to the experts today. Yes, you need to be authentic, especially in the world of personal brand. But in reality, we've been our own personal brand since we were born. I guess that is a true story. So, Petra, do you find there's a lot of misrepresentation or falseness in the social media world in which you hang out?
Yeah, surprisingly enough, it's just like the real world. So there's, it's like people get really upset, and rightfully so, when you get sleazy messages from people. But when you're in the office, there's someone who's going to say sleazy things to you as well. So it's not surprising that it's happening on LinkedIn as well. To people, that's, I guess, also being authentic. If you're a sleaze, to just use social media for that. But the thing is, there's this thing going on that people get upset about buzzwords, so suddenly authentic is a dirty word or creative is a dirty word. Whereas if you are creative, use it. And I think in my case, so I tend to act first and think later. And usually that works out well because, when I first started my own business, I wasn't authentic because I was going to deliver training in corporate and I don't have a corporate background. So I bought a pair of slacks and a jacket because I thought that's how I had to show up. I think I even wore heels.
Yeah, me too, Petra, me too.
Well, that would be authentic, right? But showing your real self.
Only at the weekends, Petra.
That's okay. But then one day I was going to deliver a training at this international business bank. And because it's right in the middle of the city center, and they did say they had a parking grass underneath, but I'm Dutch, I'm in Amsterdam, so I just ride my bike and I get there. And then I realized that I had wearing jeans and a hand knitted jumper that's probably 10 years old. And then I thought, but the training went really, really well, right? And that's when I realized I was way more at ease. I was more myself. So my message landed better. And that's where I started to get a little bit of this, well, Kevin didn't say stuff it, but he said something to that, respect attitude, where I thought, people hire me for my knowledge and not for my non-existing dress sense. Although I do now have a style, because my daughter once said, you don't have a style. Not you don't have style, but you don't have a style. So I said, okay, you're right. Instead of t-shirt and jeans, how about I only wear Nick Cave t-shirts and black jeans? Then it's a dedicated style, right? So yeah, but I found my business started really picking up once I ditched the jacket, both in real life and in a profile picture. Once I stopped watching my words because, what would people think? And anyone who's seen my LinkedIn headline, it's a bit out there. It's not how I teach it to my clients to write it. And when I first put it up there, people said to me, yeah, that's all very well when you want to work with solo entrepreneurs, but you can forget corporate gigs now. As soon as I put that headline up, I got that whole year, 75% of my revenue came from corporate gigs because guess what? They're only human beings that work there. And their managers sort of went like, hey, this is someone who's going to keep up people awake, who's not going to do some standard thing. So yes, I've also got lots of messages of people like, oh, well, you had to use the S word. It says shitloads in my headline. Like, oh, well, blah-de-da-de-da. And young lady, you might not be aware that, within seconds, you're losing clients over this. I didn't reply, but I thought, oh, that's pretty cool because that's not the clients that would be fun for me to work with. So, of course, when you really show up as yourself, there's definitely going to be people that are never going to hire you, but they're generally not the people you really want to work with, I guess. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Right, Kevin, who's been very patient but poised there like a lion about to pounce. The floor is yours. Rant away.
Yeah, I don't care about authenticity, Paul. You can move on.
Come on, I've built you up now, Kevin. Don't let the side down. To all our millions of listeners, don't let the side down now.
Okay, all right, here we go. Look, the thing I always say about this is and I am sort of expanding on again what's already been said on this subject about authenticity. And I do like to rant about it for comedic effect because that's part of my personal brand.
That's so
And I rant
authentic of you.
authentically now and again. But you know what I always say about this is sometimes the authentic you sits around in its underwear watching television and drinking red wine because it's a hot day. Do you want
I
that?
thought I switched the camera off when I did that.
No, I'm talking about you, Paul. Sit outside your windows. No, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wouldn't put that on your LinkedIn profile. You wouldn't make that your avatar picture. You sitting around, you know, in your underwear because it's a warm day in front of a fan. So authenticity is inherently a construct. It is created, you know, and it is created out of the bits that you want seen and the bits of who you are. And you know, sometimes people say that, oh well, that's a bit cynical, and it's, you know, and how can you try? No, it isn't. You do that day in, day out. That's how from the minute you get out of bed in the morning, where you probably create the authentic you that you live with for the rest of the day, to the people you talk to the people you meet in the street. You are constantly recreating an image and a set of values and a personality of who you are. Creating authenticity on social media, writing, videos, anything at all, is about a snapshot of that is appropriate for those circumstances that you put forward. And you know, Yorkshire tea is a great example. Innocent Smoothies are absolutely wonderful at it. They have this personality that they use repeatedly across their brand, down to sort of personal brand. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk, I dislike intensely, but he doesn't pick kids up from nursery swearing like that, because that bit of authenticity isn't allowable there.
Just as well because he's probably got no kids.
Well, yeah, but you know, too busy swearing. But do you see what I mean? I find this authentic, and the one bit of advice that makes me shudder is when somebody says, "Don't worry, just be entirely yourself. It'll be fine." It bloody won't.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and you're so right, we're only showing the bits that we want to show. So where I think authenticity is a good thing is that the bits that you do decide to show, that they are real, that you're not, you know, pretending, acting like I used to all dress up. Whereas, you know, that's not me. And I was also then attracting assignments that I didn't enjoy, you know, because I got asked to train sales teams, and I can't train sales teams, you know. But I totally agree with you that being totally you, I would say how you would show up at work is how you show up online, and that can be different for everybody.
Absolutely. And just to borrow from another area, that, you know, I studied photography as a younger person, as well as sort of media production and stuff. And Henri Cartier-Bresson, one of the great photographers of all time, said a good photograph is a hole in space. He just looks through a hole in space and captures that image. And I think you're doing the same with your personality. You know, you're finding that slice, that moment, that thing that is right for that thing, whether that's personal brand, business brand, you know, a new colour for your dog or whatever it is. It's all about making that choice and what expresses it best.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and for some reason, there seems to be a backlash of well, that's wrong. Somehow it ruins the authenticity if you actually think about how you're presenting yourself. Well, that's, you know, absolute nonsense, isn't it? I mean, it's just, you know, I don't get it.
And Elena, do you agree, disagree? Do you want to have an arm wrestle with Kev?
No, I completely agree. I think having that slight air of self-reserve also means that we don't actually suffer from our Gerald Ratner moment. I mean, with wearing my PR hat on, that's the one thing that you're always fighting against. Absolutely be authentic, but don't be so authentic that actually you ruin your business, because if people will buy from you because they like that identity that you've created, because they bought into that, because they feel and trust what you have bought into. If you then basically go and say that your product is rubbish because of the way in which you come across, then people aren't going to buy from you. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, and it's within all our sort of working relationships, we build trust, and people trust us because we do what we say we're going to do, we get the results that they want, and it all moves forward, and it's all great. The minute that stops happening, and particularly if it stops happening because we've started to talk about our brand in a disrespectful way, then actually we've only got ourselves to blame. So absolutely, you're authentic, but you're authentic with a degree of self-censorship, I think.
Yeah.
And control.
Yeah.
After years of avoiding it, I've recently downloaded TikTok, because I know a lot of business people are starting to use that. And just building on what we're saying, you know, there's business owners on there that are, you know, miming to songs or posing, and I know you get it on other social media platforms. Isn't that false? Isn't that going away from being authentic, or are they leveraging a platform that is encouraging that to appeal to an audience that is on that platform expecting that, if that makes sense?
Yes, all of those things.
Yeah, but I think the other thing though also is that it comes back to who your audience actually is. And when TikTok kicked off, let's face it, it benefited massively because of the first lockdown. It was a sort of 13 to sort of 30 type platform. So if your market was that, then very much people were leveraging that. I think as people have become more used to it, and the early adopters have got that, we've now got more people moving on. But I think you need to be aware of actually how much of your audience is actually on there. And also, like we've also just been saying, is that depending on what you're putting out, you could still get bitten in the bottom years down the line. So just think about it.
Yeah, you put
I
yourself.
think it's often with the new social media that they target the younger crowds, because let's face it, when we joined Facebook, our kids had to run away because that was stupid, you know. Your parents are there, so they moved to Instagram. But then we followed them to Instagram, so then they had to go to Snapchat, you know, and now it's TikTok. And now I haven't gone over to it yet, but as more and more adults and more business owners get onto TikTok, they'll have to come up with another safe space for the young ones, you know. But I think another thing in this conversation is that, for example, when I talk to clients about adding your personality to your LinkedIn presence, people sometimes mistake personality with personal stuff. You know, and they get all worried. Oh, but I don't want to tell all my personal stories. And you don't have to. That's not necessarily, you know. Personality is like, are you serious or formal? Are you funny or think you're funny? And so the rest of the house thinks you're not. But you know, all these kind of things. And you can add little things of your personal life when you're comfortable with it. You know, works really well for me. I haven't had anyone offer me a coffee in the last 4 years, which is brilliant, you know, because I absolutely hate it, and the world now knows. And it's also something that people remember you by, you know, because you'll never ever see me without tea. And it's not a gimmicky. I don't even think about it. It wasn't until someone, again, it happens, and then people point it out. When someone asked me, like, oh yeah, you were on this call and you were drinking tea. Was that on purpose because it's part of your brand? And at that stage, it wasn't. But it's just something that I do without thinking, always drinking tea. But once people started pointing it out to me, then, and this is where what Kevin said, when you choose what to show, I now make sure if I do certain things that tea is part of it or something, you know. So, but people, when they confuse personality with personal life, you definitely don't have to share everything from your personal life. But again, if you feel like doing so and you take into account, as Elena said, you know, that's still out on the internet 10 years, 20 years from now, then you can, because we're no longer having these two worlds of work and home, but it's still up to you how much of each you allow to cross over.
Do you know, I think there's a really interesting thing happening there as well, Petra. Paul, be quiet.
Shall I just leave you guys to it? Would that be better?
Yeah, grown-ups
that
are
will
talking.
work well.
Wait,
yes.
Wait. You can play later. But it's quite interesting that we are at a stage here where I genuinely believe that we are in a switch of an eon. You know, we're in the cusp of an equivalent of the old industrial revolution, switch from countryside to city to think, and we are in a stage whereby anybody who's got kids will tell you that their approach and the way they look at online is different to any other generation has ever been. It's not a separate world. It is part of the thing, and I think part of that, Petra, is what you're saying there about the distinction blurring between person and brand, person and business, person and whatever. And that fear that people used to have when they say, well, I don't want to be too clear in my business, don't be too visible in my business. What happens if I need to sell it? It's built around me. I'm not sure that even holds up anymore, because I don't think you can have a business in a lot of cases now where the personalities of the people in that business are not at the front of the public perception of that brand, you know. And if that's the case, if you accept that, to then go on and say, but I don't need to worry about my own personal brand and authenticity, you've got to, like, you're doing that wrong, aren't you? You know, it's I think you're right. I think the blurring between these boundaries is incredible these days. It's incredibly fast, and we just have to accept that is the case and deal with it, you know, and deal with it. And the tea thing is great. I'm here because he knew I'd rant, and I've been ranting about authenticity now on purpose because people thought it was funny the first time, and it's built up and it's become so much a part of my brand that I'm here because of it. Because there's no other reason for me being here. I mean, you two are experts. I was just passing.
Yeah, but in the interest of balance, we needed a northerner.
Is that what it is?
I am surprised though.
The diversity thing.
Yeah.
I am surprised that after the first panel, Paul still allows the two of us to be on the same panel.
I'm constantly amazed by it. I mean, more amazed that Elena got in here as well. She must be thinking, why did I bother? She must.
I like a good banter. It's great. I think it's. I mean, all thing is, I mean, it's in all times of business, particularly marketing. We all have different strands, and we all have different ideas and different approaches. And ultimately, we're all there to do the same job and get that out. But it's no, it's.
I don't know. I know what that job is, though, Elena.
I'm not sure I know mine.
I challenge you to find what it is in a sentence. You know, I think we build bridges. You know, and that's what we do. We build bridges to a nice, warm, fluffy, happy place where a customer buys whatever it is that we've got on offer. And for all that, you know, I play the Sean Bean bit and the gruff northern. You know, I won't take anything on that is morally or in terms of the product I don't believe in or whatever. For that reason, I think we have a duty, you know, quite a serious one, to represent the truth when we are creating these voices and these, you know, these authentic brands and things that we do, because that's what we do. We build a bridge between the buyer and the product that they want. And that's quite a responsibility, I think, because if we get it wrong, they go to the wrong people.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I remember years ago when I first started out working on a brand that I found really, really hard. And I found it really, really hard because I didn't believe in it. But we'd won the account and my bosses were, we're all up for it. I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do that? But yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, Kevin, on what you've just said. Definitely. I think that's
there's also the thing, of course, that with your values, like the other day I was working with a client, and you know, the client was explaining how they didn't want to work for organizations that do the wrong thing or whatnot. And I said, well, what's the wrong thing? Because I have very strong views, and you know, if that's gonna lose me clients, but you know, I'm like left-wing politics, I'm into recycling, I'm in lots of things, and I believe that those are the right things. But those people who oppose, dare I say, those people who want to ban abortion from the US, I think they totally believe that they are the ones that have got it right and that they stand up for their values, even though we might not consider them values. So I had my client articulate, well, you know, when you say you only want to work with companies that do the right thing, what is the right thing for you? Because you know, otherwise I'm just going to assume, which it's usually right because I only attract sort of clients that because I'm so outspoken, but still you can't sort of assume, right? So yeah.
Is that on your profile? Lefties only need apply.
I'm not sure it's on my profile, but it's somewhere on my website where You know, sometimes on a sales page, and at the end you have this, you are definitely in the right place if blah blah blah. This is not for you if blah blah blah, right? And
Yeah.
I do have somewhere there. This is not for you if you believe Trump won the 2020 election, and I'm pretty pleased about that. You know, I just put it out there because
Absolutely perfect. I think that's brilliant. I think that's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? That's who you are. You are talking to the people that you want to reach out to, that you know you can work with. And if they're not those people, why the hell would you want to work with them anyway? You know, and Eleanor, I sympathise entirely when you said you worked in a product you didn't believe in and something you don't. You know, I have and always will turn certain businesses away because I simply don't believe. In fact, me and Paul got cold. What did we get cold for not being quite with one of the more radical viewpoints? Old-fashioned. Was it old-fashioned?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was on a particular networking group, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, and you have to be who you are. And I don't think, maybe there are people out there who can represent things they don't believe in and things that they have no trust or faith in. But I'm not one of them, so I'm not going to try.
Mm.
You know,
yeah.
and I think I know Paul puts me on here to have a rant, so we can have a bit of a laugh at me, but you know, genuinely, I genuinely mean that, and I think it's really, really important that you know, regardless of what that costs you on a personal level, that you maintain your standards, you maintain who you are, you maintain what you believe. Done now. You can carry on.
Thanks very much. Well, I was gonna wrap it up there because we've sort of hit our time slot really, and I'm sure you could rant for much longer, Kevin, given the chance, but we won't do that. So
No,
just so before we finally wrap up, have you guys got any last sort of tips or pointers about how people can ensure that they're, you know, getting the right tone of voice or being as authentic as they can be? Ellen, anything from you?
I think before you post. Actually, just think, and but also, but I think at the same time, don't overthink. But still, just have that little bit of a. If you're not 100% sure about something, sleep on it. If you still don't feel like that, then the next morning, then don't post and do something else. That's probably what I'm saying.
Yeah. Anything from you, Petra?
Yeah, I think sometimes it can help to do a little brainstorming. You just take 2 sheets of paper, one with personality, one with values, and you just write everything that comes up for you, right, about yourself. And then you take a marker and you circle those, both in your values and about your personality, that are so important that if that would mean someone wouldn't want to work with you, then these are the things you definitely want to use when you're showing up, you know, because the ones where you can't compromise. There's other things where, you know, we may not agree, but we can still work together. But just to do that little brain dump and think and that can sometimes really be an eye opener for people, and it's so simple. So
Thank you. And Kevin?
Yeah, I guess I would just maybe follow on from what I said earlier about the, you know, there's comfort in structure and process sometimes. One of the best things I ever learned was from computer programmers who work output, process, input. And they say, okay, you know, what output is required, what process will create the output that is required, and what input must I put in to make sure the process happens that creates the output that's required. And if you work that way when you're talking about voice and brand, I think it probably simplifies it down to an extent where, you know, like Petra says there, it's basically what you're saying, that, isn't it? That, you know, who do I want to talk to is your output, isn't it? What, you know, what reaches to them, what process, what do I need to create, what media, whatever, to reach those people, and who am I? What's my brand, my personality that needs to be input into that process to reach the people I want to reach.
The trouble is, I'm now thinking an analogy of the digestive system, but that doesn't really work in terms of output. So thanks.
It does with my output.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to this live or on a replay, if you have any questions subsequent to this live stream, you can just put it on whatever platform you're looking at. We'll probably retouch this topic. So we're going to be looking at branding. later on in the year. So I'm sure that the question of tone of voice and authenticity will come up again. But next time we're going to have an operations and resources focus session, and we're just going to have a look at whether SMEs have their ducks in a row when it comes to the various legislative things that SMEs should do. So hopefully that'll be as interesting and engaging as this one. So thanks again, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll end the live stream there.